Oh,
Hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the client perspective. So this is a really great session. It's one that we try and do at the Indie Summit every year. And we thought we would bring it online as well to find out what clients really think and feel. So I'm just going to share the screen now so that I can show you the clients that we have today. Hold on a moment. Bear with me. Sorry, okay, technology, eh? Great, so these are the clients that we have today. And as you can see, we've got a great lineup from all different corners of the world, so we're excited. It will be moderated by Stephen Mayer, and I will hand over shortly, but I just want to go through some housekeeping before I introduce him. So timers-wise, we're going to have a 5-minute introduction, then our panelists will speak for about 35 minutes. We'll then have 15 minutes for Q&A, and we're aiming to finish by 5 minutes before the hour. If we do happen to run on at all, oh, sorry, Julian. Sorry. Hold on, Julian, I can't hear you.
Sorry,
Hello?
this one is going on 1 hour, 15 minutes.
Apologies, so sorry. Yeah, thank you very much for jumping in there. Yes, it will be going on for 1 hour, 15 minutes. So yeah, so we should be finishing about 4:15 London time. So please do keep your microphones muted at all times. When we come to the Q&A section, we will unmute your microphone if we're going to call on you to ask a question. That being said, if you want to keep your videos on, that'd be great, so our speakers have some friendly faces to talk to. As I mentioned, the Q&A portion will be right at the end. But if you think of a question in the meantime, you can send them directly to me in the chat or to Stephen, and I will pass them on to Stephen Mayer, the moderator. So to do this, just go to your chat box, and where it says to, you should see a drop-down menu. So instead of everyone, either select Stephanie Fox or Stephen Mayer. We're going to go through all of the questions. We'll select a few to ask the speakers once they have finished with their panel. So all of the questions should be sent that way, so don't send them to everyone in the chat because they'll get lost. If you would like to ask the question yourself, just type "I'll ask" in brackets, or if you'd prefer for Stephen to ask your question, just write, Stephen can ask. And also please do mention which speaker you would like to address with your question in your question, unless it's for everyone, in which case that's fine. Hopefully you'll have your Zoom viewing mode set to speaker view. If not, just click speaker view at the top right of your screen. If you have any technical issues, you can message Lizzie Gold directly in the chat, or you can send an email to Lizzie at lizzi.gold@thenetwork1.com. If for any reason the system crashes, just wait a couple of minutes and log back in with the same link you used to log in this afternoon. We will hopefully be recording and sharing this session, so you can just engage, you don't need to take notes. Thank you very much. I would now like to introduce our moderator. Stephen Mayer is the founder and CEO of digital creative agency MBA. MBA, the Acceleration Agents, has been featured in Campaign magazine in partnership with the Network One as one of the world's leading independent agencies, and its clients include Cambridge University, Interflora, and the Royal Mail. MBA is also a UK government export advocate and one of a select group of agencies to be awarded an IPA CPD Platinum 5 years running for its talent development. After graduating with an MA in Modern History from Balliol College, Oxford in 1983, Stephen entered agency account management, working at agencies including AMV, BBDO, and TBWA Simon Palmer before founding MBA. Stephen is also the chair of the DMA, the UK's Data and Marketing Association, ambassador for the Marketing Society and its previous chair, the outgoing chair of the IPA Effectiveness Board, as well as being an IPA fellow and council member. He is an Oyster Catchers Fellow, a Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, features in Debrett's People of Today, is a Tech London advocate, an E2E ambassador, a Scale Up Institute ambassador, and sits on the commercial board of BAFTA. So without further ado, I will now turn over to Stephen.
Thanks, Steph, and welcome everyone from around the world to the best particular event that we've got all week going on in the Indy Forum, of course. This is the one that everyone's been waiting for, where we talk to the clients and we get a fantastic perspective from them. And thank you very much, Steph, for the intro there. I'm sorry it was so long, but one of the things that we as MBA have been very proud of is being a member of Network One now for over 10 years, and we're very proud of that. This session, as Steph was saying, we've run variously over the last few years as part of the Indy Summit and now as part of this Indy Forum. And we've been in China, we've been in the UK, and this is very much where you get to ask those questions of the client that you've always wanted to ask. And we deliberately try and make it quite an interesting, spiky event, and one where, you can be disruptive. And as you say, I would ask everyone to be as candid as possible in asking those questions. And indeed, I'm asking the clients to be as candid as they possibly can as well. The format this year is going to be slightly different to previous years for those who've been. This is going to be sort of in two parts. Now that Premiership football has come back to the UK, it's going to be a game of two halves. So the good news is, our first part of it is going to be essentially where we ask our clients to give us a couple of minutes, very, very briefly, on their perspective on how the role of the CMO is changing and has changed over the last 2 or 3 years. Now, clearly COVID-19 has had an impact on that, but we're very much talking about what's been happening over the last couple of years is the changing nature of the CMO role. So that's the first part. We'll spend a bit of time on that, and I'll probe a little bit. And then the second part is, what is the impact? The second question for our clients, again, asking for a couple of minutes for them to give a perspective on, is what is the impact of that changing role of the CMO had on the changing needs and requirements from agencies? And so that's the second part of our session today. What we'll then do is it will allow us at least half an hour for Q&A to make this as interactive as possible. Steph has mentioned, obviously, the mechanism to do that. I'll do my best not to mess that up through the Q&A function and get all the questions wrong as I hurriedly try and make sense of it and get the questions obviously asked. And, some I might ask myself, some if anybody wants to ask it, we'll see how the time's going. So let me start now by introducing our amazing stellar panel. And the good news is that we have a panel here that is across 4 continents, and a panel also that covers all the different areas in terms of markets and in terms of sectors. We've also got people who've worked with PR agencies, with media agencies, and creative agencies and digital agencies, and a whole range of different agencies, which is great. So we've really got a real range and a fantastic perspective here. So let me now introduce our wonderful, wonderful group of clients that we have today, and I'm really excited to introduce them and hear what they have to say. First of all, we have Katie Dulake. She is based in the UK. She is General Manager of Marketing Communications for Mitsubishi Motors in the UK. She spent 1.5 years at Mitsubishi now. Before that, many, many years working in financial services in the UK. But before that, she also worked in recruitment marketing for the British Army. So all I'd say is if you do ask her a tough question, be careful. Secondly, we have Nonta Kozo Mendesela, who is in South Africa today. She's Group CMO of Momentum Metropolitan Holdings. She spent 3.5 years there at this financial giant that you might know, that's an asset management insurance company. Before that, working in Standard Bank, and then before that in SAB, the brewery. Most importantly, I think I may have pronounced her name correctly and the name of her company correctly in a way that Julian was unable to do last year, which is obviously the most important objective of today. Sorry about that, Julian. Thirdly, we've got Hélène Blanchette. She is in Los Angeles, in Laguna Beach at the moment. Very, very kind of her to join us. She's the president of MyJane, almost a year now, working at MyJane, the women's cannabis-derived wellness company. Before that, she spent over 20 years working at Xerox across Asia, across North America. And so she's got a fantastic experience working in B2B as well as now in the B2C area. I'm very sorry, Helene. I know it's 7 o'clock in the morning in Laguna Beach, but it is Laguna Beach, so not as bad as it could be. But thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Next, we have Nicole Puzio. Nicole is currently in Italy, although she resides her work in China because she is Senior Global Procurement Manager of Oppo. Oppo, you may know, is one of the largest smartphone companies now in Shenzhen in China. And she's been there for a while now, but before that she worked in agencies in Shanghai. So she's got a fantastic experience both in procurement but also in agency life. And so any difficult questions about money, please ask Nicole. Then lastly, we have Tony Miller. Tony is in the UK at the moment, but he's an American, and he's the marketing director at the moment of WW, previously Weight Watchers. He's only been there for a few months. Before that, he was keeping the magic of childhood alive at the wonderful Disney for several years. And before that, though, he also spent a lot of time in digital agencies around North America and in the UK. So he's got tremendous experience there. He tells me he hasn't got a glass of rosé, despite the fact it's Cannes Week, hiding under his desk, but I think he probably has actually, but we'll find out maybe later. So welcome all to our wonderful panel. Thank you so much for joining us. We're very lucky to have you here today. And let me kick off now with our first question, where I'd really appreciate if, and what I'll do is I'll, if it's okay, if we can go around the table, as it were, in the order that I've introduced people. So starting with Katie, then Nontokozo, then Hélène, then Nicole, and then Tony. If each of you could give me a couple of minutes on your view on the changing role of the CMO. I mean, we know for years now, and pre-COVID, there's been lots of talk about should the CMO be the chief growth officer, bearing in mind the fact that growth essentially comes from marketing, and they're the people in the organization who drive the revenue and the growth of the company. Should it be, should the CIO, the CDO, the data officer report into the CMO? And also, how do you elevate the role of the CMO? Should the CMO be on the board? And there's been these kind of debates and issues now for quite a long time as the world digitizes. And so I'd be really interested to know, obviously, our wonderful panel's view on that today. So I'm now going to pass over to them and ask them to give us a couple of minutes view on that, and then I can come back to some questions afterwards. So if it's okay, I'll ask Katie to kick off.
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. In answer to a couple of your questions there, I obviously think the CMO should be on board level. And I think one of the key ways that the CMO role has been changing for me is really as the shift from brands becoming about something that you just put in a TV ad or into a campaign becomes much more about a kind of a holistic customer experience. And I think that change really means that the role has become bigger than ever, in my view. There are two aspects, I think, that are particular catalysts, I suppose. Firstly is the increased focus on data and on tech that allows us to kind of enhance the customer experience. So CMO's role is to become more, acquainted with that than ever before. And secondly, as we move away from just advertising through to a role that's much more about creating or editing content. And I think those are the two big catalysts for change that mean a CMO has had to really step up and increase the breadth of their knowledge. So it's no longer just to be aware and keeping up with the trends. I would expect a CMO to have a really informed strategic capability plan for MarTech, which I think again warrants a more strategic role on board than I think one would have seen previously. And I suppose the second area is some of those softer skill sets around the ability to I suppose almost more PR type skill sets as more content becomes customer created rather than those traditional marketing skill sets of, you know, being able to tell a good yarn.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Reggie. That's fascinating. Nontokozo. Hello. Have we got Nontokozo with us?
Right, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Great. Thank you.
Okay, you can hear me now. Great. Hi, guys. So I just want to, like, the way I'm going to answer the question is going to come from maybe 3 places. I think that the CMOs now are problem solvers. We are not just about producing the TV ads and the latest campaigns in terms of retail promotions, et cetera, et cetera. I'm seeing my role becoming about solving problems and also being responsible for creating culture in an organization or influencing culture in an organization. So more and more, I've got to think, when we put out a strategy, what does it mean in terms of employees? What does it mean in terms of our service experience? And what does it mean in terms of how the audience will expect, you know, whether they're interacting with an advisor, you know, in a meeting off site away from the immediate team. So the problem solving implication of what I do means that I've got to think about the connected pieces in the broader organization and what the delivery would be required from their side. And I'm finding that even agencies now need to realize that the employee connection is something that they've got to think about versus leave it to a different section of the business. So that's the first thing. The other thing, in financial services, there's a lot of complexity. I often envy friends and colleagues who are in FMCG spaces where marketing drives the agenda. In financial services, marketing, at least in my organizations, we don't drive the agenda. The agenda is driven by actuaries, by product teams, by the sales teams, and marketing has got to kind of find a way to kind of understand that complexity and solve the problems within the understanding of the complexity. So what that means for agencies is that, you know, our lives are not necessarily that linear or that organized. We're all catching balls from different places, and kind of functioning within the gray or within the complex or within the spaghetti is something that's going to kind of become a natural way of existing. So we solve problems beyond just the ad. Our work is connected to the connected in the ecosystem of the business, like human resources or human capital. Employees are an important part of that, and you've got to think about what it means for your delivery. The world is complex. Financial services, it's a mess where marketing and driving the agenda, confidently operating in that is important. And then the last part is that I think for us, especially in South Africa, and I think it's around the world, clients are activists. Our audience have a bigger voice. So the audience activism is something that not only affects how your campaigns are received, but the reputation of the organization is connected to the activism. So the responsibility of understanding cultures, understanding the uniqueness of your audiences, not painting everybody with the same brush, doing a proper job.
Anyone here, Nontokozo?
I think Nontokozo is finished. I can't see her speaking.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Did you finish, Nontokozo? I missed that.
Yes, I'm finished.
Cut out there. Fantastic. Thanks so much. So that kind of slightly more holistic problem-solving approach that you've spoken about and Katie's spoken about. I mean, Helene, would you agree with that or not? But I mean, maybe I'll let you speak first, and then maybe we can come back to that later.
So
So I think you're on mute. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, I am on mute.
Yeah, great.
No, I'm not. I have multiple perspectives on that. But, well, the first one is absolutely the CMO should be on the board.
Yep.
And the main reason is to be really strategically understanding all decisions that are made in the board, participate in it, and link completely with operation. A CMO, if it's not linked to the overall strategic decisions of the company and understanding the implication it's going to have on the face out to the market, and just be at the receiving end of it to have to execute a decision that was done is a very different ballgame. I've had the opportunity to be in both positions, and I can say that it makes a very big difference to be able to be part of the leadership team in the board that makes decisions. So I'm all for it. As far as the role of the CMO itself, I think the first thing that the CMO has to do right now is to be very resilient and creative, and to be able to really turn around, and the company will count on the CMO to pivot quickly, not just put more money into advertising, but really pivot, on how we should be structured. We just went, for instance, in my company, where the model was to have built an agency within the company, because I'm part of a parent company that has 7 brands, and thought we'll have our own agency. We had like 30 people working of all aspects, from SEO to graphic designers, photographer, everything. And that became not so agile right now with the COVID. It became extremely clunky. And then obviously the first thing that goes when there's downsizing that happens is you go where it's going to not affect the direct revenue. So you're going to let go a marketing person before you let go a salesperson, for instance. So the minute that happened, we had to pivot in an instant. And now we're a model where actually we hire multiple agencies as for different things, depending of their strength and their understanding of our market. And I find that a much more agile way to work. And it's a bit difficult for a CMO right now, because you have an adaptation of not having your kingdom anymore. But other than that, it has to be with the flexibility that this is allowing you is just great.
Great, thanks, Helene. Pass over now to Nicole. It's got no doubt a very different perspective from your Chinese experience, particularly, Nicole. Hello.
Yes, let me tell you that I have to agree with the previous panelists on the need of CMOs to have a more holistic vision right now, as we live in a marketing era where an integrated marketing approach is now more needed than ever. So I do agree on that. And also, to answer your question, I want to highlight 2 points. First of all, and this is particularly evident in China, the technology developments are fundamental right now for marketing activities. If you think about how much AI technologies support the implementation of offline and online marketing activities, and also the back-end analysis of data. So I believe that it's really important for CMOs to stay on top of these trends, and also understand how to leverage these tools to achieve better results. And the second point that I want to highlight is cross-cultural communication. Because, for example, in my case, I've seen in China in the last couple of years, many Chinese brands becoming very fast global brands. And when you shift from a smaller scale to a wider scale in such a short time, it is extremely necessary to make the whole company structure adjust to the new bigger scale. And so internally, I think that the CMO should be aware of the differences among all the employees, cultural differences. And I think their role also implies that they need to be, you know, the gatekeeper of all these cultural differences to better understand how to let the company work better and more efficiently from a structural standpoint. And also I think that cross-cultural communication is extremely important also to communicate the brand outside of the company, because if you think about it, right now consumers, especially the young consumers, have a more globalized mindset due to the access of social media that give them a wider vision on so many elements of other cultures. So I think that it's important for CMO to work as a mediator, also cultural mediator, and analyze cultures very closely to better understand how to speak to their consumers.
Very good. Thank you very much, Nicole. So can I pass over now to Tony? I mean, the role of the CMO is getting bigger all the time by the sound of things. I think it's getting scary. Would you agree with that, Tony?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just, agree and echo everything that has already been said on the panel already. So it is, in my mind and experience, I think it's a jack of all trades wearing multiple hats around the CDO responsibilities, around your growth officer responsibilities. You need to lean into and understand that MarTech landscape, because you have to own that in order to allow for media optimization. I think budgets are critical and shrinking, and so we have to eke more value out of our media dollar spend, and we have to be accountable to that, to the business, and show the value that is bringing into the business. So attribution models are important. I think no longer can we rely on last click attribution. We have to actually really fully understand the funnel and the value each channel is bringing, from TV all the way through to search. I think we have to make sure we're part of that conversation. So having a seat on the board is crucial. You have to partner with the other board members in order to stand up for what's working, but also stand up for what's not working. I think we get into this whole position of everything has to work successfully to actually grow the company, which it does, but that's not at the point of allowing for failure or allowing for testing. I think we have to be brave to be able to take some of that hard-earned money to test, so that we can actually find new things, find new ways to optimize, find new messages that are going to land and be resilient to our consumers, or to find new consumers, because we can't keep going after the same ones time and time again. So I think there's bravery in there, there's agility in there, there's being able to think on your feet, but being able to be knowledgeable around data and how you use data to grow, and insights to kind of then build creative. There's understanding of that media tech organization. And then there's understanding of optimization across the board.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tony. That's great. One of the things that strikes me as we're talking now is that, clearly, as you've rightly pointed out, and Kate, you said this at the very beginning, that the need to be more integrated, more holistic, and it's very much a theme that's coming through here. And yet, we still know situations where marketing either isn't on the board, or alternatively, there isn't the appreciation in other parts of the organization of that. I mean, why do you think that maybe that disconnect takes place? Because it's quite clear that, as you say, unless you control the data, you control the MarTech, you control the growth, and you have an understanding that consumer, putting the customer first. It's surprising that there isn't necessarily appreciation sometimes of that in some large organisations. I don't know if anybody wanted to comment on that at all.
I'll say, I think it boils down to I think we're playing catch up. I think a lot of it has just been very traditional in terms of its view on the place of marketing, and a lot of it has been focused on the upper funnel activities of brand and actually landing brands. And I think that has always potentially maybe just not had been seen as relevant enough to sit on the board. And I think now we're in this complete shift that actually we're like, hold on a minute, marketing is a very specific and crucial driver of business growth. So actually we need to get the right skill set in this role and the right leadership to actually allow for growth in a world where budgets are shrinking.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. That's really good. There's some fantastic insights there, and that's been really helpful. And there's quite a consistent theme, obviously, there as well. What I'm now going to do is, and we'll have a chance in about 15 minutes or so for wider Q&A. Please send your questions through. You don't want to have to rely on all my questions. I'm sure yours are much more interesting than mine. So really, we talked about the sort of increased complexity and the fact that there is a need to be more resilient and more ability to connect with other members of the board and have all those capabilities around MarTech and everything else that weren't historically there a few years ago. So, the job of the marketing director has got tougher, and there is more pressures upon the role. So what does that then therefore mean for agencies? Because that complexity arguably adds mirrors the complexity presumably for the agency world. But obviously it'd be interested to know everyone's perspective on that. So we know that we're living in an agency landscape where there is a bit of a polarization between the sort of large Accentures and some of the holding companies and more of the sort of boutiques on the other end. We're also looking at more in-housing going on, and this sort of blending of in-housing and out-housing going on in lots of cases. And also, we've had a move from retainers to project, and there's obviously, I'm sure all agencies would argue there's been squeezing of margins and all those kind of things that have taken place. So I expect the question really is, in the light of this changing role of the CMO, what therefore are the changing needs and requirements of an agency as a result of that? And if I go around in the same order again, if that's okay, start with Katie, if that's all right. I'd love to hear your view on that, Katie.
I think you're absolutely right when you talk about this need for mirroring, and that's exactly the point that I would make. And I'm not sure these are new requirements for agencies, but I think some things become more important if you look at the changing role of what CMOs, are required to do. I think it's more important than ever that agency partners are seen as partners. I think it's very difficult sometimes to reduce agency relationships to the way that I think some traditional procurement departments might like to see them. I think it's important that your agency are seen as business partners, and that kind of is a positive, but also kind of means that you have to take the rough with the smooth as well. I think for the agility that's required these days, and Ellen spoke well about this, you have to see your agencies as part of the team, really. So they have to be able to really understand your business and understand the pressures and the challenges that you are under and that you are facing. I think the agencies that are able to kind of multi-skill and multitask and turn their hand at most things are the ones that are the most successful. I think one of the biggest reaches, I suspect, for some of them is that ability to work critically with data, to be able to kind of interpret and add value and respond to data is really important, probably much more so than it's ever been. And that kind of ability to really, to do the problem solving that Nantakosi spoke about, you need that on your team, really. So yeah. I think it's the more agile, the fleeter agencies for me that have the multi-skills at hand to kind of draw upon to supplement our own teams, right. to kind of to help front into that, really. That's for me. And I don't think many of those things are new. I think it's just more so, right. Is my sense.
And would you say that COVID has put more pressure on, accelerated that, would you say?
Oh, it's such a funny time at the moment. I mean, I think that need for agility,
Yeah.
you know, the agencies who've been able to kind of scale up, scale down, say, look, you know, we get you've only got 75% of your team in. What do you need us to do? You know, the guys that have really mucked in are the guys that I will be forever grateful to.
Yes.
You know, who've understood that, you know, with no sales coming in,
Yeah.
things are going to be a bit different. So again, it's all about understanding the business.
Yes. Very good. Thank you very much. Nontokozo.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Is my sound fine, Stephen?
Yes. Very good.
All right. So I've got a few points, but let me just try and sum them up neatly. My first headline is an African saying that says, "It takes a village to raise a child." It takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
And if agencies can see themselves as part of my village, we are all villagers here, and the children we're raising are the brands. And I think, you know, if something goes wrong in your village, you don't just be like, you know, my job is to work at the gas station or at the grocery store. The fact that something's gone wrong with the water pipe is not my business. So back to this whole mentality of we're solving a problem, we are raising this child, and all villagers must get involved. And I think the sub point to that is that a good idea can come from any place. So all members of this village have an equal responsibility to raise the child. And I'm finding that there is that rigidity in agencies that still says, if my job is to do account management, I will not speak about creative. If my job is to be a strategist, I will not tell account managers. And in my mind, especially now that there is just no time, the village, you know, like just galvanize, make sure that this child is looked after well, and we all will share in the joy and the pride of this child growing well. So just remember, it takes a village to raise a child, and we're all members of this village. The second part is that I'm finding speed, accuracy, and integration are now table stake. Speed, accuracy, and integration, table stake. So I remember a conversation with one of my agencies, and like, oh, if we had time, it would just be amazing. I was like, actually, nobody has time. I don't have time because the board doesn't give me time. My business peers and leaders aren't giving me time. So I don't have time. So you also won't have time. Let's all deal and deliver, and let's make sure it works. So just ask for anything else. Ask for budget, but not time. So yeah, speed, accuracy, integration have become table stake. And then I also think that given where we are in the world, we have to push for inclusivity and diversity. Like our audiences have become activists. So when we offend or misinterpret, or you know, we are linear or we are into stereotypes, that doesn't serve me or you. It doesn't. So this thing that, you know, will be inclusive when the politics are right. No, we are responsible for shaping cultures. We're also responsible for putting a mirror with responsibility. So we need to see teams and agencies that are representative. We need to see work that respects cultures and demonstrates diversity. And we need agency executives to hire people that don't look like themselves. I'm hiring people that challenge me. I'm hiring people that don't speak like me. And I love that. I love that there is young, there is mature, there is, you know, brown, there is white, there is yellow, there is orange, there is black. I love all of that. And I find some places we are not there yet. And we kept getting into trouble and putting out, you know, one of my talks was the hashtag that crashed the share price. The reason why that hashtag sinks the share price is because your team is not representative and diverse enough. So just let's help each other out in addressing that.
Brilliant. I love that village analogy. I'm going to steal that. Thank you very much.
Mm.
Fantastic. Len, what's your perspective from, you know, I mean, obviously a lot of B2B experience over the years as well, actually, which, you know, no doubt is slightly different to maybe working in more consumer markets, but I'd be interested.
Yeah, now I'm in the consumer market for being in the B2B space for so many years. And, but also, and I echo Nantoko's, you could not be so more right than this. It's so well said. Add this now to a new industry that is in development, that has absolutely no background or past history except a shady history. But the reality is today, in my industry, the new cannabis industry, that is more into products, as you could see behind me, these are the MyJane boxes. It's products, it's refined products, it's consumer products. And this is something that is popular now. CBD oil, CBD products are popular in many countries of the world. There's not too many countries now that that where hemp is still illegal. So this, I can say to all agencies that are listening right now, this is a market in growth. This is a market that generates billions and billions of dollars. It's where the money is being thrown right now. This is where investments are being thrown. This is where agencies are flourishing. But it's an industry that requires knowledge of the industry. It requires, this is a difficult market to be in. It is a difficult market to market in, and it's an industry that is full of regulations, way above just the supplement industry. And this, the ecosystem and what you need to learn for it is quite a lot. And I receive daily a number of agencies that are trying to get us as clients, and I could see their pitch, and you know, someone would come or call and just talk about, oh, we are, you know, specialists of this and specialists of that, and we are, you know, with awards and this and that, and we will help you in your SEO strategy and your Facebook ads and your digital marketing and all of that. And you know, from that moment, I know they're not for us, because you can't do Facebook ads unless you can't do social media ads. There's so many rules and regulations on it that is very intricate on how you got to be, it's smart marketing in that field. And also there's new apps on a daily basis that will be developed to be able to geolocate where stores are. And so it's a very complex world, but it's a very lucrative world. So you need to spend time. And I just hired actually an SEO agency. And that agency came to me and said, we're going to offer you to do it at a very low cost. And we're going to put a lot of resource because we want to learn your industry at the same time. And I thought, okay, so you have the right attitude. They didn't come in thinking that we were the top. She said, we're going to read everything about it. We're going to research everything about it, but we need a company to be able to really apply it. Would you be willing to be almost the guinea pig, although it actually just benefits me. So there's no problem there. But I could see that they had the right attitude, and I'm not saying, you know, go for free for everybody, because, you know, I'm still paying, but I'm just saying, take one of your clients or select a client and really learn about who they are and what they are and how they operate and the difficulty of the industry. And it's extremely interesting, because then all your team can be, you know, begin to be creative on how to do new ways of doing marketing agency work in a world that is in growth, and that it will continue to be in growth, but that we manage on quicksand all the time. Regulations changes on almost a daily basis. So we always, you know, market on quicksand and say, okay, we can do this week, but oops, the regular FDA is going to come with a regulation. So it's an interesting world. If you want to get in, you're going to be an agency of value, because that's the future. And there's a lot of need in our industry. But so that's the kind, in multiculturalism is an important one too.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, you said the potential there, and it's sort of the point that Katie made earlier on about the business partner, because I can see your SEO agency is taking that along, playing that long game, aren't they? Which is very in a growth sector. So can I move to Nicole now, and be interested to know your perspective. You've worked in agencies a lot over the years, and know your procurement and in China. Is it a very different situation, would you say, there?
So as you said at the beginning, I work for agencies and now I work for a brand. And I have to say that when I worked for agencies, I used to think that, I used to wonder why clients hire good agencies and then want to tell them what to do, right? That's usually the situation. Now that I work for a brand, I still believe that that's what we do. But at the same time, there are more, dynamics that are clear to me now. So my suggestion for agencies is that they need to understand how to keep a balance between pushing their ideas so that the client is put on the right path, and also at the same time understanding the boundaries and the limitations, because as the previous panelist said, we want problem solvers. So we hire agencies as our consultants to solve problems. We cannot, go into why we cannot do that and why we cannot do this. So there must be a balance, and agencies should work on this. And also to touch on the COVID-19 consequences. I think that one of the biggest consequences of COVID-19 is that unfortunately agencies, especially the smaller ones, had to make many employees redundant. Right. And that's unfortunate, of course. And from a client's perspective, at least that's my opinion, this also means that agencies now need to make sure that clients can trust their team. Because now when I meet an agency and I see all the awards that they won and the great case studies, I wonder, is the team that achieved those goals still there? So who's gonna actually be put on my account? And so I think that now agencies really need to put more attention and to put more value on their people and include this element when they introduce themselves to a client.
Right, very good. Thank you very much. And Tony, how should you, again, got enormous experience working in the agency world over the years, as well as obviously with Disney and now with WW. How do you see that sort of changing requirement?
Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to add, but just to reiterate what has been already said, and I think Nantakozo just put it so eloquently in her analogies there with the village, and especially the speed, accuracy, integration piece. I think it is now about full understanding of my business, but I have to take the time to allow them that full understanding of my business. So I think a lot of times, well, we trip each other up because we expect our agencies to know more than what they do, and they can only see through a guardrails that you give them, and they can only see it through, if it's from a digital performance perspective, as example, they can only see it through that lens, and they don't know what's going on in the background and those pressures. We have to take time to stop and actually open up those doors to actually allow them in, and sometimes that's harder to do, but we have to do that and make them true partners, to kind of reveal what's in our chest, and really bring them in to be a true partner. And that needs that, you have to build trust. And actually with that trust, rewards many things. And it's the opportunity to show value in other ways. So it's that ideas of, actually, they may be my SEO agency, but they may come with a really brilliant idea on some other piece of marketing that I may need or not know I need. So it's actually being able to look at it holistically. So yeah, I don't have much more to add than what the other panel said, but it is around that trust piece, the speed, accuracy, and full integration.
Brilliant, thank you very much. there's just that's brilliant, really, really, really insightful, and you know, quite a lot of consistent themes there, which is great as well. I think that, I mean, there's a couple of sort of questions coming in. There's one I've got here around the balance between sort of brand and response, performance and long term. You know, the sort of the long and the short of it. And you know, there's quite a lot of work that, as you know, has happened, particularly in the UK with the IPA around looking at you know, the reduction in long-term activity to the detriment, you know, of that building of the brand. And actually, there's a piece of research I saw recently from the FT that said that something like there was a split between, whereas say the short-term activity had represented say 65, sorry, the long-term activity had represented say 65% a couple of years ago of a lot of brands globally. It's now the reverse. It's now much more obviously about the short-term performance than it is about the long-term, which is partly obviously being accelerated by COVID, but also clearly, you know, the pressures of the recent crisis and the economy and all that sort of stuff has happened. But so a question maybe, you know, for whoever like to kick off it, you know, is there too much focus on the short term to the detriment of the long term at the moment? Anybody like to comment?
I would like to comment on that. Hold on, am I on mute? No, okay. Yeah, I'd like to comment on that on a simple thing. During the first thing that the board said when the whole COVID is, you know, we're not going to have any marketing dollars released unless there's a measured ROI. And yet, what has sustained us as being one of viewed as one of the strongest brand in the CBD business in the United States is the power of our brand that we had. So the legacy of the power of our brand and the PR and the constant presence that we had on all of the social media, growing while others were just falling apart and concentrating on themselves so much. Now today, every call I make, when they, you know, when I start my call, people will say, "Oh my God, my Jane," and yet we've been hit like everybody else. Our sales plummeted like everybody else, right? But our brand really pushed us forward and continued to push us forward as being the leader on the market. Right. And that's where you know that the balance between ROI and pushing the brand has right. to come together and not one taking over the other.
Right. Okay. Very good. There's a question I've got coming in from James Devon. Actually, I'm going to pass over to him. He'd like to ask it himself. So, James, can I pass to you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much for the interesting debate so far. I work in an agency, and I'm just with Stephen, as it happens. I'd just like to say, how does the panel go about prioritising what's to in-house versus what to outsource to agencies? And a subsidiary to that is there anything that you would never in-house and never outsource?
I have had in-house agencies before, and I think it's a really interesting question. I try and in-house as little as possible because that makes me less flexible. I also truly believe that the kind, you know, we're based in the Cotswolds, and it's a lovely part of the country, but I value agency partners because of their breadth of experience, their, you know, knowledge of other sectors, of other clients, you know, that they're far greater levels of creativity than anybody, you know, with the best will in the world that I'm able to attract into an automotive company working in, you know, rural Gloucestershire. So that's not to say that creative people don't live in the country, but I think there are some of the more creative roles I would absolutely never in-house, because I don't think what makes a good client side marketer is what makes a good creative talent, in my sense.
Would
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Tony.
I wanted to say that in my case, we have a design studio in-house and we've got agencies. So we the design studio is almost an extension of the agency, because of the budgets are low. There's need for pace. So for big thinking, for concept, for strategic thinking, for insights, we can't do it ourselves internally. But so it becomes a case of agencies must also be okay to create for a handover, so that the internal studio can then do all the other, sizing, various formats, shapes this way, bigger. That's the relationship that we've created successfully between what's in-house and what sits externally.
Very good. So the more lateral sort of objective thinking is externally, and the more, some of the more the process orientated stuff is internally. Yeah, sorry, Tony, you were going to comment.
No, I was just going to add, just kind of on the other side, from a media piece, I would actually look at really building kind of a hybrid model of like what we in-house and versus what we use agencies for, because I think, with GDPR and ICO and data just becoming central, I think we as brands need to have that, the transparency and the control back in our seat. In terms of how media is being spent, how is it being optimized? Are we getting, true value for our media dollars? And so I think whether that is we own the systems, talking about the marketing technology and the setup, we allow our agencies to work on that on our behalf if we can't afford the headcount. But we need to start upsizing and right-sizing the skill sets to actually own that piece of the business, so that we actually can be a bit more nimble and we can be more accountable for our spend.
Right. Just a question I'd like to move on to around money, because it's always, everyone always wants to talk about money. So I'll be the person to ask the question. And maybe I could pass over this question initially to Nicole, because, in your role as procurement. But performance-related pay is one of those things that, we've talked about for years. And I've been, as I'm sure many of you have been involved in sort of industry groups trying to look at different ways of valuing outcomes versus, inputs and all those kind of things. And yet there still is very, very few amazing examples out there that I'm aware of true performance-related pay being built in or baked into contracts. Is that your experience, Nicole? And then indeed, why, if I'm right, why isn't it more prevalent?
Well, that's a tough question. Usually procurement departments must have their range to evaluate services, and no matter, so usually the conversation between brands and procurement departments of brands and agencies is, my value as an agency is higher, so my range for this service is higher as well. Mm-hmm. I have to say that in our department, it is, to go back to your question as well, it is necessary to establish a long-term partnership with agencies, also to be able to better manage budget and expectations and the whole financial elements, because only by seeing results you can actually give grades to that service. So I believe that there is a difference between agencies because of the level of their clients, the level of their campaigns and results that they can show after the first meeting. But I think that technically it requires a long-term partnership to actually see if those numbers are related to reality.
And obviously the move, and I don't know the exact data on this, but my understanding is that there's been a general shift across the world, from more classical retainer relationships to more project-based relationships, which of course makes that more difficult, doesn't it? To work out how to,
exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely. And the thing.
Sorry.
Yes, but on the other, yeah.
Sorry, Helene.
I was just going to say, project-based, I guess at the end of the day, all clients, well, I shouldn't say all, because my husband would say it's not all, it's you. But most clients are looking for long-term relationships with their agency. They're not looking just at one project. I think that we're doing project by project right now too, because there was a lot of disappointment when you had long-term relationship with some agencies, and then, you know, there's this complacent that takes place, and or you have to start over all the time in the same agency because the staff moves so much and there's so many, you know, churn of employees. And at one point so I think that now I see myself as giving projects and testing the waters with the agencies before I'm ready to commit with a full-time retainer. And that's how I taste it.
That's a really interesting point, actually, which sort of maybe slightly segues into another. And please, just by the way, everyone, just please ask questions. Just throw them at us, and I'll obviously come to them. But while I'm waiting, there was again a piece of research that I just saw that be developed by Creative Brief, the sort of marketing agency, brand agency platform in the UK, that said that they I think it's mainly in Europe, they looked at CMOs, and 76% of their panel said that they would like to change the pitching process so that basically, rather than a full-blown pitch, a project would be taken on before a long-term relationship is built, because the whole classical long-term pitch process is flawed in many ways. It's kind of what you're saying there, really, that you know, is the pitch process as we know it, the full-blown pitch process, you know, is it fundamentally flawed? Discuss. I'd be interested in anyone's views on that.
So I wanted to first kind of give a comment about your earlier question. I do like this performance link to agency remuneration. I really like it. And I remember a while back, I had a conversation with one of my agencies, and I said, as a CMO, I'm under pressure to deliver. And when an agency has the security blanket of their retainer, that covers them. So when, you know, suboptimal work, but their salary and their paycheck is sealed. My bonus isn't. So my team knows. I'm like, guys, you're in the business of, you are affecting my bonus. Your retainer is guaranteed and my bonus ain't. So I need you to know that, why must I be signing your retainer with the confidence you have? So I do quite like that, because actually, I'm so sorry, but your millions are secure, but my bonus isn't. So just understand that. So I do like this performance link. In terms of the pitching process, I mean, this whole thing of just try agencies and decide, it depends, I think, for me, on where your business is at, and the critical role you need the agency to play. So we went through a pitching process about 2 years ago, and I find there's that balance of, we can't expect agencies to solve problems that they're not familiar with. They don't know your culture, they don't know your legislation, etc. So they're really coming in with like not the ideal state of understanding. So what we decided to do as part of our pitch process was to give the agencies a case study, but using the existing work to demonstrate how they respond to some of the challenges we face. And with that, though, the thing that I don't like is when agencies bring international talent into a pitch. So there would be somebody from Dubai and somebody from the UK and somebody from New York, and you know that these people are never going to be part of the team.
Right. Okay.
So that for me is the biggest thing, is just have the team, but understand the strategic, my focus is this, and your ability, or have you dealt with this problem before?
Yes.
Have you solved similar challenges before? And if I get a sense of confidence in that regard, then things have worked out fine.
Yes. Any other panel like to comment on the pitching process? Is it currently fit for purpose?
Yeah, I would like to add something on this. So I believe that client agency is a relationship as any other relationship. There is a need for chemistry, you know. So a client might hire the best agency on the industry, but but it's probably not the best agency for them. So I think that the pitch process is a trial to let agency show what their understanding of that specific problem that the brand has is. And I do know that many agencies don't like pitching because some might think that is maybe work given for free, but it isn't. I mean, in my opinion, it's just a tool to let clients evaluate your performance and evaluate the understanding that you have of the brand and of that specific need. And also it adds transparency to the whole process.
Right. I've got another question here, which is slightly different tack actually, which is about Facebook. Okay. So as I even saw today that Mark Pritchard of P&G said he was considering pulling out of Facebook, and I know that Patagonia, North Face, Ben & Jerry's have done it as well. I just wondered if there's any particular comment on that from anyone. Is it right or wrong?
Very difficult.
We've been
having this conversation over the last couple of days. It's very difficult to know when a topic is relevant and the brand has the right to kind of have a view on it. Really, that's always the first kind of sense check with that. I think the Facebook has become such a kind of foundation for a lot of our campaign activity. It's very difficult to replace. So from a practical point of view, one would need to kind of have some kind of alternative. But I do think that the other kind of point that one needs to understand is what one can hope to achieve, and whether we think we're able to create sustained change. I suppose, to be honest, it's a really difficult debate, and it's one that we're having at the moment. I think only by a really sustained boycott can we hope to affect change. And I think all of those brands are some of them are not especially large, and some of them are not great spenders in that area. So it's difficult. We're keeping a watching brief on it to see where it goes, because at the moment it's not at all clear how us boycotting could achieve much, to be honest.
Thank you. That's good. The other question I've got, I know has come up here, is actually a COVID question, which I know we're very much talking about trends here around the changing roles of both the CMOs and agencies over the years. But what is the impact of COVID really? Is there a long-term impact? Is Mark Ritson right that in the long term, this is a kind of a major blip in the life cycle of the world and it won't really radically change anything? Or is there some radical changes that are impacted here in terms of marketing, in terms of agency landscape, or is it just accelerating? Does anybody like to comment on that?
Yeah, I think a couple things. It depends on the brand and the industry you're in too, obviously. I think for us specifically, it's allowed us to actually get further in our digital first journey. I think, we rely a lot on our physical workshop environment for WW, and we've always had this plan to move to a digital, not completely digital, but more digital environment to have virtual coaching and virtual opportunities to be able to reach more people, because a lot of people can't always get to the physical location of where our workshops are. So COVID actually has really fast-tracked our strategy immensely, because we were able to transfer globally all of our physical workshops around the world to virtual workshops in 6 days. And so that was just, an ability to kind of really pivot the business much faster than we would have if COVID didn't happen. So that's kind of one thing to get us kind of where we need to be further. It also, obviously, I think as everybody can attest to, we have to just be really critical on how long it takes to do stuff. What is a priority? What can we do with smaller budgets? We have to be a bit more kind of grassroots thinking and creative and thinking on your feet and testing things that you potentially might not have tested because there's an unknown. And I think seasonality has gone out the window for us. I think, you know, we've been reliant on moments in time typically that we work well, but we're finding right now is a really good time for us for, you know, obvious reasons. You know, we've done some independent research in the UK, and there is, you know, a whole host of anxiety that has increased, stress has increased, snacking has increased, activity has decreased, mental health is issues. So I think these are all things that concern us as the health and wellness business, that we're able to actually, you know, grasp and help, you know, the nation get through and build healthy habits and get people back on track. So again, though, I think, you know, I'm speaking through a lens of, you know, the brand that I'm currently working for, but it's different for every industry.
Can I just have a last comment, maybe just from Nicole on that, because obviously China, you're at a different stage. You've kind of been through it, you've come out of it. Would you agree with Tony there that there's in terms of that impact from your perspective?
I do agree with him. I do agree with him, and I would like to add something else, something more. So I think that from another perspective, what we can learn from this pandemic and its consequences is that brand can use marketing not just to sell products, but they can use marketing to grow communities and really be a guidance for their consumers. I've seen in China brands doing amazing things to help their communities. And I think this is an amazing direction. So marketing promotion is a channel for brands that can be used in a very different way now.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. I think I'm just going to check with Steph. Have we run out of time? I got to wrap now. I got time for one more question.
I think we can squeeze in maybe just one more if you have one.
I've got a question from Matt Seddon here. His question is, what are the advantages that the panel believes that an indie agency holds over the network agencies? A fantastic question. I would have loved to ask that question myself. I'm not allowed to because I'm an independent moderator, but a great question. Who would like to answer that?
Oh, I love the, what's the word? Like with my independent agencies, like there is no hierarchy or, you know, if that boss hasn't approved that station, no, none of that. So I love that. And actually my independent agencies are so hungry to make things work.
Right.
Because it starts and stops with them. I love that as well.
Great, we love it. Anybody else want to support the indie agency?
I absolutely agree. We always used to refer to it as skin in the game, and I think you can tell, you know, the independent agencies are always kind of hungrier. They're more invested. You know, you're more important to them, and it's more possible to kind of work as a team. It's sometimes difficult to do that with some of the bigger networked agencies.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. I agree.
Helen, sorry, you were going to say?
Well, I completely agree with them. I mean, small agencies has way more skin in the game. It's easier to integrate as a family member of the brand as opposed to them and us. So that's for sure. I don't have to be international. It's USA only in my business, but I think it's essential to still have that boutique aspect of it. Why do people go to boutique hotel versus the Sheraton? Right? It's the same.
That is an amazing place to finish. I tell you, that's fantastic. And Julian could have written it himself. But no, seriously, that's really wonderful. I mean, really, really fantastic debate. I mean, I've taken away so many amazing insights on this. I mean, I have to say, obviously, the village is definitely one of those that I've got. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
my general point around, you know, it's all part, you're all part of the partnership, you're all part of the team. There's the skin in the game, that, you know, it's thinking about the rough and the smooth, working together. It's lovely to hear that, because that's what great agencies do, and it's great to hear that that's kind of what clients still want from agencies. And but at the same time, the complexity is something that agencies need to get their hands on. You know, they need to understand that the real complexity that all clients have these days around data and MarTech and everything else. I mean, it's so complex, and the agency needs to have that complex view as well, and reflect that and be the mirror to that. So that was fascinating, really good. Thank you so much. And thank you to the Network One team for putting this wonderful event on, and thanks very much for making sure the technology works and everything, which is very impressive. And thank you again to my amazing panelists for taking up the time. I really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for listening, and particularly thanks again to Hélène for getting up at whatever time in the morning. So appreciated. It's a lot easier in London and South Africa, but certainly I'm very impressed by that. And thank you very much. And please enjoy the beach, Hélène, and lovely to see everyone. And thanks so much for all joining us. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Right, thank you very much. It was great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.